So
And then
we're,
we come out, see who's speakers.
yeah. So we're ready to start?
We're just waiting for it to be able to.
Yeah, okay.
There she is.
All right, good morning. It's 9:07. Welcome to the Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I'd ask at this time a reminder to everybody that if you have mobile devices to please turn them off or silence them. The ARB hearings are open to the public, and this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of the hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence for tax roll number 16348, 224 Eagle Terrace Road, legal description, Plan 9811923, Block 3, Lot 22. I will start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedures and ask for comments. My name is Martin Buckley. I am the presiding officer appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are Councillor Karen Merritt to my right, Michelle Ouellette to my left. Are there any objections to the panel as constituted from the complainants? No, you're okay. Ms. Bannerman, I believe, are you?
No objection.
No objections, thank you. I will now have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainants and the complainant. If you would please state the name, for the record, your name, and if you are the owner of the property under complaint.
The property owner, do you want me to go to the microphone? Sure. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Mark Godfroy. I'm the registered property owner at 224 Eagle Terrace Road. I've been a resident of Canmore for the past 10 years now, and I'm a full-time resident in Canmore. And this is my wife, Cheryl.
And I'm Cheryl Godfroy, also a registered property owner of 224 Eagle Terrace Road and resident of Canmore for the past 10 years.
Thank you. And now to the respondent.
My name is Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Benchmark Assessment Consultants, and we do the contracted assessment services for the town of Canmore.
Thank you. The LARB's, the Local Assessment Review Board's standard practice is to first have the complainant present all of their evidence, followed by questions from the respondent, and then the panel. After that, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by the questions from the complainant and then the panel. The complainant has the opportunity for rebuttal. And finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize their evidence, with the complainant presenting first. If anyone needs a break, or if a problem comes up, please let the panel know as soon as possible, and we'll try and address those things as quickly as we can. Any questions regarding the procedure today? I see none from the complainants. From the respondent, any concerns? I see that the respondent has indicated she has no concerns either. I see both parties have exchanged the disclosure evidence before the hearing. To save the time, I propose that we mark all the documents for now. Can I turn to the clerk for that?
And we have the respondent package R1, which is 41 pages.
Thank you. So now if there's any questions regarding the admissibility, we can address those later. If any questions arise, we can still deal with them and strike the material from the record later if necessary. Is everybody comfortable with that? I'm seeing nodding of heads from them. Ms. Bannerman, you're okay with that? Thank you. Are there any preliminary matters for the panel to discuss or address? Ms. Ouellette?
Was there a question of some disclosure back and forth in this file? Or was it received?
There was a question of disclosure, yeah.
Should we go up now? Just, okay.
Yes, our understanding is there is a question regarding disclosure. We received an email from Benchmark Appraisals indicating to us that their testimonial evidence, their disclosure was inadmissible because it was received late by us. Are you aware of this? So I guess our question is, how are we going to proceed now? Because we certainly would like the opportunity to speak to the board about this process.
If I could just make one comment regarding this.
Certainly.
So the disclosure was sent to the ARB on time, but it was a day late. I had the wrong email address for the complainant. So my presentation is going to rely on the information that's in the complainant's disclosure, as well as relevant legislation and case law, which don't require disclosure under past board decisions. So I won't be referring to the material that I submitted.
Yeah, and we're amenable to that. That makes sense.
All right, so I'm
Okay.
hearing everything sounds like it's
Kosher.
satisfactory from both the respondent and the complainants. How does the panel feel? Any concerns?
Concerns.
Getting used to this pushing button things. If it doesn't control sports, I'm not interested. All right. We can start the presentations. So the complainant has the floor.
Okay. I guess my first question to the board, Mr. Chair, is whether or not the board has had the opportunity to read and review our submission.
Yes, from my perspective, I read all of the documentation on both complainant and respondent side.
Okay, great.
I also did.
You have as well? Okay.
Yes, and I went through it as well, too.
Okay, thanks. I'm not going to belabor our presentation then. I do have a few points that we would like to make, and I'm just going to go through those then. First of all, I'll begin with why we're appealing our 2024 property assessment. As we've indicated in our submission, we do not believe that our property is unique within our neighborhood. We live in the community of Eagle Terrace. That community was built between 1998 and 2002. There were architectural controls in place with the town at the time, and all homes are of a similar construction. I'd also like to point out that we have not made any major upgrades to our property in the past 10 years. That does not include, of course, necessary capital maintenance and renewal activities like replacing roof, replacing exterior doors, things that would normally be associated with maintaining a home as opposed to additions that would increase its value. I'd also like to make the point that from our perspective, there's limited information available to homeowners about the attributes of other properties in our neighborhood. And this makes it challenging for ourselves as homeowners to actually determine whether our assessment is fair and consistent. And that is the reason why we asked for an explanation from Benchmark Appraisals, the respondent. Our property as well is surrounded by properties of equal or greater market value that have property assessments that are much lower than our own. For example, one of our neighbors directly adjacent to us is in a home that sold for over $2 million in 2023, yet has an assessed value of approximately $344,000 less than our home. 309 Eagle Heights Lane, which is directly behind us, made significant improvements to their exterior yard, over $100,000 worth of landscaping improvements 2 years ago, yet have an assessed value that is over $177,000 less than ours. And most significantly, our neighbor at 220 Eagle Terrace Road made significant improvements to their exterior yard in the last 5 years, yet have an assessment which is $162,000 below, or $162,000 rather below ours. This particular example is what causes us to question the process of valuation and the method of calculation of assessed values of homes in Canmore. For example, 220 Eagle Terrace Road was actually assessed at a greater value than our property 2 years ago, yet for whatever reason is assessed at $162,000 lower this year. What we're seeking then is an explanation of how our property assessment has been calculated by the assessor. To date, we've not been able to obtain an explanation of quantitative method, any quantitative method that is used to arrive at the amount assigned to our property. The assessor has only been able to provide a copy of a residential rate payer report that does not include any information whatsoever about how the total was arrived at. Grand totals at the bottom of that document is, I suspect, meant to be a total of some other amounts, yet those other amounts do not appear on the ratepayers report, simply grand totals. When asked back in March, and that's at tab C of our document, the assessor provided an explanation as to the method that was used to arrive at the amount of our assessment, and was very specific in stating that the direct sales comparison approach was used to arrive at our assessment. In the document that's inadmissible today that was provided by the respondent, that approach is now being referred to as the market modified cost approach. It's apparent that there's two different methods that are being used to assess the value of a home, and it's unclear to us what the difference is between the two. We have been provided with two explanations, however. And we have no explanation which one was actually used. We've also received from the respondent an explanation of how 3 properties were used to justify the valuation of our property. What we take issue with respect to this is that the assessor in March of this past year indicated to us that there's ample reliable sales data to derive accurate market assessments. However, this suggests to us that whenever the respondent is queried about a home assessment in the town of Canmore, the assessor has the opportunity to choose which properties may be used to justify its previous assessment. This is obviously not quantitative or objective in our opinion. And finally, perhaps by coincidence, we actually took the opportunity to calculate the average of the 3 properties that were provided to us by the assessor as justification for our assessment, and that average equals $1.918 million. Our assessment happens to be $1.818 million. It's unclear, again, what process is being used and how these calculations are being made. We do appreciate that mass appraisal is the approach to assessing property values. What we're hoping we're able to illustrate here to you today is that there is significant inconsistency in this process as a whole, and there's a complete lack of transparency being provided to us as taxpayers here in the town of Canmore. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open the opportunity for the respondent to ask questions.
I don't have any questions at this time.
No questions, thank you. Does the panel have any questions? Ms. Ouellette?
I'm just curious if you were aware of an additional application that you could make for the data or deeper dive. I learned of this at our last hearing where there's an additional form that you can fill in to get more details.
No, we are not.
Okay.
And obviously that information is not made available to taxpayers on the assessment roll form that we receive, nor is it available on the Town of Canmore's website, to the best of our knowledge.
Okay, thanks.
More questions? Any questions?
I do have one other thing to add. When we came here today, we came with the knowledge that was provided to us by the respondent in their submission that's inadmissible here, that part of this process involves the complainant coming to the board with a calculated, appraised, or assessed value of their property that they're seeking to have their assessment changed to. Again, unclear to a taxpayer making an appeal under this particular process. In fact, the complaint form, which I understand is from the MGA, asks the complainant to actually state on the complaint form the assessed value of their home. My question to the board is, how does one go about doing that? Especially given the inconsistency that appears to exist in assessments that are made in our neighborhood anyway by the appraiser.
I'm a little bit concerned. Did you indicate your question was about something from evidence that was deemed to be inadmissible today?
Yes, benchmark appraisal's evidence.
That is inadmissible.
Inadmissible, right.
But I'm not sure we can allow questions to be
Oh,
raised.
I see what you're saying. Yes, understand.
Okay, thank you.
Got it.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, this,
No, my bad.
yeah. The other part that you raised about not including a value and I'm not quite sure how I can respond to that because the form says you're expected to tell us what you think your
I understand.
property's worth.
And I don't know if you want to speak to this, but for us, this is a bit of an education.
Yeah.
We've never been through this process before. Now we are very familiar with it, and we certainly know how to proceed in subsequent years. We're hoping that we don't have to, and that there's clarity and transparency in these assessments, and that there's fairness and consistency. That doesn't appear to be the case right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Does the respondent have subsequent questions, or are you fine so far?
Yeah, I'm fine right now. Thank you.
No. And I think we've had questions from the panel?
Not at the moment.
Yeah. Can I ask the clerk again, the inadmissible evidence? What specifically is that? So I know. The inadmissible evidence. What specifically was that?
That was the respondent's disclosure.
The full response disclosure. So,
The 41 pages. R1.
okay, thank you. So it's labeled tab C. It's part of the disclosure package from the complainant. That is from the respondent. That was in the March correspondence. That is still admissible, and we can ask questions on that. You have received that, though, obviously, because that's back in March. Yeah. I noticed the properties on the top of page 6 of 8. I believe those were not shown in your...
Those properties, yes, on our
Yeah,
Yeah, this one.
they were not, they, March response. Yeah, sorry.
That's correct.
Yeah. But I noticed they didn't appear in your tab E, your disclosure page 8 of 8.
No, that was our initial.
Yeah, that's right.
That was our initial, like, these were provided as a, when we submitted our package, right?
That's
Yeah.
correct. No, I understand, Mr. Chair. Your question is why did we not add these 3 properties to our submission on page 6? Is that the question? I'll be honest with you. Those properties are not properties that are necessarily adjacent to our home.
Okay.
And we chose instead to concentrate on the properties that directly surrounded us. Those 3 properties that you see on page 6 are 3 properties that have sold within the past 3 years, between 2020 and 2023. The fact of the matter is that none of those 3 properties necessarily represent or are consistent with our property. But that said, to be honest with you, we simply did a circle around our house and we looked at the properties directly adjacent to us. That's the long and the short of it. The only other properties that we've included on our list are the properties that are up at the top of Eagle Heights Lane, which for the most part also have lower assessments than ours, yet all back onto green space. I'm sure you're familiar with the neighborhood.
Sorry?
I'm sure you're familiar with the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you know those properties back onto land that's owned by Silvertip, that's not currently being developed. No neighbors, big backyards, green space, lower assessment, higher market value.
Okay, thank you. There's nothing more from the complainants. We can hear from the respondent.
Sure, thank you. I'm here today to respectfully ask the board to confirm the property assessment for the subject property in the town of Canmore, which is valued at $1,818,000 for the 2023 assessment year. As I mentioned previously, unfortunately, although I sent my response to the assessment review board, I had the wrong email address for the complainant, so they did not receive a copy of my disclosure until the day after our deadline. Because of this, for the sake of procedural fairness, I will not be referring to my submission. Rather, I will refer to the complainant's material, general legislation, and prior board and court decisions, which do not require disclosure as they are a matter of public record. So in my presentation, I'll walk through the key elements that underpin this assessment, demonstrate its compliance with legislative standards, and provide support for the valuation process. So the property assessments for the town of Canmore were prepared in strict accordance with the Municipal Government Act and the matters relating to assessment and taxation regulations. These governing documents outline that property assessments must reflect market value as determined by a mass appraisal process. For the 2023 assessment year, the valuation reflects the property's estimated value as of July 1st, 2023, and its physical condition as of December 31st, 2023. So the MRAT regulation requires that assessments use mass appraisal techniques, estimate the value of the fee simple estate, and reflect typical market conditions for similar properties. Mass appraisal, which is a methodology mandated by the MGA, involves grouping comparable properties, identifying common characteristics, and applying standardized valuation models to them. So there was a little bit of differences with regards to which approach we took to value properties. So generally, when we're dealing with assessment inquiries earlier in the year, we refer to the approach that we use as the direct sales approach. The reason for that is it's more easily understood, and although we do use the market modified cost approach, it really similarly mirrors the direct sales approach. So for ease in explaining to property owners, we refer to it as the direct sales approach. That's why there'd be some confusion with regards to the approach that we actually use. So this approach, what it does is it adjusts property values based on the current market data, and it really is the most appropriate for reflecting the actions of buyers and sellers in the marketplace, given that there's sufficient sales data and it derives reliable market estimates. So for the 2023 valuation, sales data from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2023 were analyzed. Sales are time adjusted to account for market fluctuations, ensuring that the assessed values are as accurate and reflective of the July 1st, 2023 valuation date as possible. Time adjusted sales allow for a more robust data set, and it increases the reliability of the assessments. So the calculation of the property assessment can be found on page 7 of the complainant's submission. This shows the property as a semi-custom split-level home with 1,707 square feet on a 7,088 square foot lot. So another area that was raised in the complainant submission, I'll just go over a burden of proof. So the onus to prove that an assessment is incorrect, it is the requirement of the complainant. This principle has been well established by the Court of King's Bench and was adopted by assessment review boards. So in GSL Chevrolet Cadillac Limited versus the Calgary, City of Calgary, 2013 Alberta King's Bench now, 318, I'll just quote paragraph 21. So regardless, under section 460 sub 7 of the MGA, the complainant bears the onus of demonstrating what information shown on the assessment is incorrect, explaining how it is incorrect, indicating what the correct information is, and identifying what the assessed value the complainant requests. So the complainant bears the burden of proof in challenging an assessment. They must demonstrate that the assessment is incorrect and provide convincing evidence to justify a different valuation. However, in this case, I submit that the complainant has not met this burden. So if you could take a look at the complainant C1, on the complaint form is a section where the property owner must state what the requested assessment value should be. There's been no requested amount either on the complaint form or in any reference in their disclosure in C2. So I'd just like to take you to the chart on page 8 of C2 of the complainant's information. This only references the assessment and lot size of the properties in the surrounding area. In addition, no comparable sales have been provided by the complainant. It has not been demonstrated that any of these comparable properties presented by the complainant are sufficiently similar to the subject property in terms of size, quality of construction, or other key characteristics other than location. Furthermore, the complainant has not convincingly demonstrated what they believe the correct assessment should be. In contrast, comparable sales that are more aligned with the subject property can be found on page 6 of the complainant's submission. These properties, similar in construction, they're split-level properties of semi-custom quality as well, similar in size, and they support the assessed value of $1,818,000. The market modified cost approach, coupled with these validated comparable sales, ensures that the assessment is both accurate and equitable when compared to similar properties in Canmore. The subject property at 224 Eagle Terrace Road has a larger lot size compared to all the 3 comparables and is either newer or comparable in year built. The floor area is reasonably aligned with the comparables, and the sale prices adjusted to July 1st, 2023 indicate that the assessment of $1,818,000 is fair and justified. These comparables provide strong support for the subject property's 2023 assessment. So in conclusion, the property assessment for the subject property at $1,818,000 has been prepared in compliance with the MGA and MRAT using the mass appraisal methodology and the market modified cost approach. The complainant has not provided sufficient evidence to prove that the assessment is incorrect or to justify a change in value. Therefore, I respectfully ask the board to confirm the assessment of $1,818,000 as fair, accurate, and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Banneran. The opportunity is now available for the complainants to ask questions of the respondent. No questions from the complainant. Thank you. From the panel, Ms. Mara, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay. Ms. Lett?
I don't have any questions either.
Okay. Ms. Bannerman, I do have some questions. First of all, the complainant mentioned in his presentation that one of the properties that he thought was comparable, or maybe not comparable, but had done significant landscaping to the tune of low six figures. What sort of impact would that have on a property's assessment?
So when we prepare property assessments, we do not include items such as landscaping. They're considered short-lived items. So when we prepare the assessments, we're looking at the lot size and we're looking at the improvements on the lot size, but not landscaping. That is very specific in nature. And like I said, if somebody doesn't weed or put weed killer on their lawn, it grows out and all those kind of things. And that's standard practice across Alberta, not to assess the landscaping.
Okay, thank you. My next question is the complainant's disclosure C2, page 6 of 8, the three comparables that were provided back in, provided back in March. And I note the one in particular, 333 Eagle Heights, with the assessment of $1,910. The lot area and the floor area are both lesser than the subject property of the appeal, but the assessment is higher. Can you explain that difference?
Well, I probably can't point to specific items because it wasn't included in my disclosure. I can say generally that the three comparable sales that I provided the property owners at the time in March were the most similar to the subject property in terms of location. They were all split levels, semi-custom quality. And so any differences in the assessed values are attributed directly to the variations in the property characteristics between these properties. So things such as basement finish, size of garage, any kind of plumbing fixtures included within, if they have extra bathrooms, things like that would account for differences in the assessed value. But at the end of the day, the same model is applied to all of those properties. So they're being treated fairly, with the differences being differences in the property characteristics themselves.
Okay, thank you. No further questions from the board. It is now the opportunity for the complainant to provide a rebuttal.
I don't know if the board sees the hypocrisy in that last comment from the professor.
Sorry, we have to have it at the mic.
I'm not sure if the board sees the hypocrisy in that most recent comment from the respondent. So what we're hearing as taxpayers is that the direct sales approach is being used to determine the assessed value of our property. The direct sales approach uses properties as sold. Properties as sold are sold based on the characteristics and attributes of the properties: landscaping, exterior finishes, location. Yet for whatever reason, these are not considered when assessments are being made. So we have an assessed value of our home that's based on properties that have been sold with attributes, similar properties with attributes that are not the same as ours, which are increasing their value, and as a result, we're being impacted. So I don't quite understand why we can have two processes, one for assessment and one for determining an actual sale on a house.
Ms. Bannerman, you have an opportunity to raise any questions you might have about the respondent's rebuttal evidence.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
No questions? Any from the board? Ms. Mara says no. Ms. Ouellette? No. No? This is the argument summation part of the hearing. So to the complainants, you have the first opportunity to summate or provide a summary of your arguments.
We appreciate having had the opportunity to participate in this process and to gain a greater understanding of how the Assessment Review Board works. We appreciate that there will be no change to the valuation of our property for this year because we haven't been able to identify and demonstrate how our property should be valued relative to the assessment we received. Unfortunately, the thing that we're going to end up leaving this Assessment Review Board without is an explanation of the quantitative process that went into arriving at the assessed value of our property. That is still not clear. It's fine and dandy to explain that a market-modified cost approach is being used, but the homeowner in the town of Canmore has zero visibility on what that process actually entails or how the assessments are arrived at. That is our greatest complaint, and unfortunately, I understand that this is perhaps not the forum to be seeking that information, so we're obviously going to have to do some homework and figure out where we need to bring this concern to the town of Canmore so that it can be righted. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Respondent?
Sure, and just to respond to the complainant's last statement regarding the accessibility of information. So when the original inquiry came through in March, we provided the response to the original inquiry, and there was no request after that time for additional information to be provided. In the case where additional explanation is required, we do refer them, property owners, to the town because these requests can be made through the town, and there's a form and fees associated with that according to the town's fee bylaw. So this access to information falls under Section 299 and 300 of the Municipal Government Act. So the information is available. We generally have a two-pronged approach. When we get an inquiry, after the assessment notices are mailed, we provide a higher level amount of information, which generally satisfies the majority of property owners. They want to see that they're assessed fairly. For property owners who required additional detailed information and want to do the calculation of the assessments themselves, that information is available upon request, which in this case was not requested. So just to summarize, the general information regarding the property assessment. So the property assessment for the subject property at $1,818,000 has been prepared in compliance with the MGA and with NRAD. We used the mass appraisal methodology and used the market modified cost approach, which I explained earlier is a less simplistic way of explaining the valuation methodology than telling property owners that it's the direct sales, but it very much does mirror the direct sales approach most out of any of the approaches. So the complainant has not provided sufficient sales evidence or evidence to prove that the assessment is incorrect or to justify any change in value. Therefore, again, I respectfully ask the board to confirm the assessment at $1,818,000. Thank you.
Thank you. The last word goes to the complainant. Did you have anything further to say? Okay, the complainant is indicating no further comment. That concludes the hearing. Thank you very much for your cooperation in your presentations. So I will ask the parties today, both the respondent and the complainant, if you feel you've had if you've been heard today and that you've received a fair hearing. Yes, the process has been followed, and we appreciate the opportunity to participate. Okay, thank you. The complainant has indicated they were satisfied. The respondent?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are concluded. Thank you very much.
Hi, sorry everyone, we're just having a little bit of a technical problem. We'll be hopefully sorted in just a moment.
So ready to go? Okay. 54. Good morning, and welcome to this Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I will take this time to remind everyone present to please turn off any mobile devices or otherwise silence them. I would like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public and that this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll number 21700. Municipal address is Unit 6, 511 6th Avenue. Legal description is Plan 1512948, Lot 6 or Unit 6. I will start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard if there are any. My name is Martin Buckley, and I'm the presiding officer appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are to my right, Councillor Karen Mara, and to my left, Michelle Ouellette. Does anyone have any objections to the panel as constituted? The complainant, are you satisfied with the panel?
Yes, I am.
The respondent?
Yes, I am.
Okay, hearing no complaints, we can move forward. Can the parties please introduce themselves, starting with the complainant? State your name,
Yep.
your record. State for the record your name, please, and whether you're the owner of the property.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Derek Welding, and I'm the owner of Unit 6 at 511 6th Ave.
Okay, thank you. To the respondent, your name and organization and your position with the municipality, please.
Sure. My name's Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Benchmark Assessment Consultants, and we do the contracted assessment services for the town of Canmore.
Okay, thank you. So our standard practice is to have the complainant present all of their evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent and then the panel. Next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by questions from the complainant and then the panel. The complainant then has an opportunity for rebuttal. Finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize their evidence for the panel with the complainant presenting first. If anyone needs a break or if a problem comes up, please let the panel know as soon as possible, and we can address those things as we go. Are there any questions regarding the procedure today, or is everyone satisfied with the process as was laid out? Complainant?
No questions at this time.
Okay, Ms. Bannerman, the respondent?
No questions from me either.
And the panel is all fine? Good, thank you. Both parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing. To save time, I propose that we mark all documents for the record as now. That won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility later. If any such questions arise, we can still deal with them and strike material from the record later if necessary. Is everybody comfortable with that procedure? Complainant?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Bannerman, the respondent? Panel is fine with that? You used to that? Okay, good. So can the clerk please give us the documents that what we have here?
The documents for this hearing are complainant package marked C1, which is the complainant form, which is 1 page. Complainant package marked C2 is the complainant disclosure, which is 36 pages. And respondent package marked R1, which is the respondent disclosure, is 44 pages.
Okay, thank you. Are there any preliminary issues for the panel to address? No. I'm hearing no from both panel members. So we can start the presentations. So Mr. Wilding, you're up first.
All right. Thank you for your time this morning, members of the panel. So my name again, Derek Wilding. I'm the owner of Unit 6 at 511 6th Ave in Canmore. I've been the owner of that property for roughly 4 years now. So purchased the property in February of 2020 for $900,000. And at the time, I was able to negotiate a significantly lower purchase price than the surrounding units within the development, and a price that was $49,000, almost $50,000 below the list price and $149,000 below the opening price. I was able to negotiate this purchase price because the green space immediately adjacent to the property at the time was being considered for rezoning and residential redevelopment. And page 1 of my disclosure evidence actually indicates the location of my specific unit within the Elk Run Encore development there at 511 6th Ave. So you can, if you take a look at that, it's sort of in the top left-hand corner there, the ground floor plan, and Unit 6 is listed at the top there. In the spring of 2023, the town of Canmore approved an area redevelopment plan for that adjacent green space into multifamily residential condo units with a height allowance of 3.5 stories and a further 10% height allowance for architectural energy efficiency. And the rezoning and conceptual design allows for the construction of multifamily dwellings that are more than a story higher than my property, to be built within just several meters of that property line with the 511 6th Ave property. This redevelopment is going to remove the green space. It's going to obscure the mountain views and the natural lighting that currently exists for my property, and it will also eliminate the current privacy that exists. And page 10 of my disclosure evidence shows an aerial view of the existing green space, and page 22 a conceptual layout for the redevelopment of those lands. Page 25 also shows the view corridor assessment, which essentially highlights that the existing views that do exist from my property will be completely obscured by the new development. So at some point in the not too distant future, instead of bordering a green space, benefiting from unobstructed mountain views, I'll look at either the wall or look directly into the neighboring multifamily units. And my belief is that this has dramatic impact on the market value of the property. It's my understanding that the Alberta property assessment legislation stipulates that assessments be based on market value or what a property would be expected to sell for in an open market arm's length transaction between a willing buyer and a willing seller. And this is essentially the transaction that occurred when I purchased my property in 2020 for significantly less than the surrounding unit. It's further my understanding that the mass appraisal approach to determining property assessments involves grouping properties with common characteristics and an apples to apples approach to establish a generalized market value of an individual property, and that mass appraisal approach was used to determine my 2023 assessment. When my property was assessed in 2023, the assessment group included 8 property sales of 7 units within the 511 6th Avenue or 6th Avenue development. And while my interior finishings and my property's general location within the town of Canmore are comparable to the others in that sales group, the directional exposure of my property and its immediate proximity to the redevelopment are not. My unit has south and west exposures, both of which directly face the land that's being redeveloped, and my property is situated at the adjoining property line. Every other property in the appraisal group benefits from being set back from the redevelopment and from either a north-south exposure or, in some instances, a northeast and west exposure that will not be significantly impacted by the new residential development. My 2023 assessed market value is nearly identical to that of Unit 9 at 511 6th Ave, a unit which benefits from a northeast and west exposure and is positioned furthest at the east end of the 511 6th Ave development, so furthest away from the redevelopment lands or the new development. Page 36 of my disclosure shows Unit 9 at 1,850 square feet, with an assessed market value of 1.238 million, whereas my unit's 1,870 square feet with an assessed market value of 1.23. While I appreciate the efficiency of the mass appraisal methodology, I'd like to suggest that it's only effective when the properties being grouped together share common characteristics. And I feel that for my 2023 assessment, my property was assessed inequitably using that process, and that the assessors failed to take into account the exposure and proximity of my specific property to the new development, and that the rezoning of the adjacent land to multifamily residential will have significant impacts, and has had significant impacts on the market value, as was demonstrated by the purchase price in 2020. Thus, I'm asking the Appeal Review Board to consider the previous purchase price, the July 1st, 2023 sale adjusted price of $1,085,100 when determining an assessed market value for the purpose of the 2023 assessment. Given there are no properties in the assessment group that share the unique positional characteristics of my property, I don't believe the mass appraisal approach can be effectively applied. And I'm asking the review board to establish 2023 assessed market value of $1,085,000. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Does the respondent have any questions of the complainant?
Yeah, I just have one question. So with regards to your disclosure, you've included on the first page bylaw 2021-07. Can you just read for me what the date that this bylaw was approved?
Sorry, can you pose the question again?
Sure, sorry. So in your information, you have bylaw 2021-07 included as the first page.
Yep.
And can you just read to me what date that bylaw was approved for the rezoning?
Yeah, it was approved on March 3rd, 2022.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Does the board have any questions?
Any questions?
I have no questions at this time.
I do have one, Mr. Walding. The chart on, it's page 35 of 35 in the complainant disclosure C2. I'm not sure I caught all the verbiage with respect to the comparisons that you put forward here. In particular, between your unit number 6 and the unit number 9.
So unit 9 is positioned at the opposite end of the 511 6th Ave development. So it is furthest away from the redevelopment land and will not be impacted, or I would suggest will be the least impacted from the redevelopment of the adjacent property. And it also benefits from a northeast and west exposure that won't be impacted at all from the redevelopment or the new development.
Okay. At the current time, these the documents you submitted are strictly plans, and there hasn't been any development yet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I think that concludes my questions. Thank you. Respondent, your opportunity?
Sure. Oh, no more questions.
No questions, okay. It's time for your evidence. Did you want to present?
Sure, yes. So
Thank
thank you. Thank you. I'm here today to request that the Assessment Review Board confirm the property assessment for the subject property at $1,230,000 for the 2023 assessment year. So the complainant has raised concerns regarding the impact of the zoning of adjacent land and resulting future development on the value of their property. They argue that the rezoning, which allows for increased height allowances, was not considered in the 2023 assessment, and that this development was reflected in the 2021 purchase price of their property. However, I'd like to emphasize that the assessment must be based on typical market conditions as of July 1st, 2023, and not necessarily on individual sales or unique factors like the adjacent lands rezoning, unless those factors have a clear and measurable impact on the market as a whole. I'd like to draw your attention to a few key points that demonstrate the accuracy and fairness of this assessment. So if you go to page 8 of my submission, I'm just going to go through that the legislation mandates that property assessments reflect the market value as of the valuation date, which for the 2024 tax year is July 1st, 2023. Although the complainant points to the purchase price of their property in 2021, it is important to note that this purchase price does not solely determine the assessment. We analyze a wide range of sales to capture the broader market trends that have occurred up until June 30th, 2023. This ensures that the assessed value reflects the typical market conditions rather than being based solely on one transaction. So property assessments for the town of Canmore are conducted in accordance with the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation. These regulations require us to use mass appraisal, which means we assess properties based on typical market conditions for similar properties rather than individual circumstances. This ensures fairness and consistency across all properties across the town. Mass appraisal involves grouping comparable properties, identifying common characteristics, and applying standardized valuation models back to the properties. It differs from single property appraisals by valuing groups of properties simultaneously, ensuring uniformity and consistency across assessments. So for residential properties in the town of Canmore, the market modified cost approach is used. This approach adjusts property values based on current market data and is the most appropriate for reflecting the actions of buyers and sellers in the marketplace, given that sufficient sales data exists to derive reliable market estimates. So for the 2023 valuation, sales from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2023 was analyzed. Sales are time adjusted to account for market fluctuations, ensuring that the assessed values are as accurate and reflective of the July 1st, 2023 valuation date as possible. Time adjusted sales allow for a more robust data set, increasing the reliability of the assessments. So the calculation of the property assessment can be found on page 12. And we've provided comparables on page 15, and these are the same comparables as were shown in the complainant's disclosure. So these are comparable sales which are in the vicinity of the subject property. They were analyzed and adjusted for the market conditions, and they support the assessed value. In fact, the subject property, although not the most recent sale, sold below the per square foot value of the other comparable properties, demonstrating that the assessment is reasonable in the context of the broader market trends. It's important to note that sales have occurred in this complex after the complainant's 2021 purchase. And so there's no market evidence suggesting that a reduction in the overall market value of the property is apparent due to the adjacent rezoning. The market continues to trend upward, and we've not observed any sales or market data that would suggest the adjacent rezoning would diminish the property's value at this time. 2 of the sales comparables we shared transferred after the bylaw 2021-07 date of March 3rd, 2022, not showing any indication of any impact to the market value. So the potential future impact of development, well acknowledged, does not currently affect the 2023 assessment, as we must assess properties based on the conditions as of July 1st, 2023. In conclusion, we believe that the subject property's assessment is both fair and equitable, reflecting the current market conditions. The assessment was prepared in accordance with the legislation, and the comparable sales support the valuation. While the complainant's concerns regarding future development are noted, they do not presently impact the market value as of July 1st, 2023. So we respectfully request that the board confirm the 2023 assessment at $1,230,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilding, do you have any questions of Ms. Bannerman?
I do have one question for Ms. Bannerman. And in the comparable properties that were used to determine the market value assessment 2023, do any of those properties, or are any of those properties directly adjacent to the redevelopment land, with the exception of mine?
No, they're not.
Okay, and there was no consideration made for the fact that that land is slated for redevelopment with an additional height allowance for those multifamily units, correct?
We haven't seen any market evidence showing that this future development is going to impact those properties. So looking at the complex, your complex, even though the properties don't maybe directly abut that redevelopment area, they do abut the road. They do abut other properties as well. So there's no, I guess I wouldn't say with any certainty that there's any impact worse for your property than there would be for theirs.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions? Board questions? Ms. Ladd?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Mara?
I also did not have any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Bannerman, you indicated there's no market evidence to indicate a decrease in the property values in that area, and you mentioned sales. I apologize, I may have missed it. Were they were the sales within that complex that Mr. Wilding lives in?
Yes, all the sales that we provided for comparables are all within this complex.
Okay, and again, you reiterate, you said you've seen no effect on property values with respect to the proposed development next door.
We haven't seen an impact on the proposed development. That may change once development actually commences, but as of July 1st, 2023, there was no development started at that time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilding, it's now the opportunity for rebuttal evidence, if you have any.
I do not.
Okay, thank you. So I gather there's no questions from the respondent then, if there's no rebuttal evidence,
No questions.
and none from the panel. It's the argument summation period. Mr. Wilding, you have the first opportunity to present your argument summation.
Thank you. Yeah, again, I'd just like to reiterate that I don't feel like the mass appraisal approach was equitably applied in this context, and that the characteristics of my property are unique from the other properties within the development at 511 6th Ave. And while I don't have any specific evidence indicating that the redevelopment or rezoning will impact my property value or my market value beyond the purchase price, when I purchased the property, I think it's fair to assume that when you build a 3.5-story building, a story higher than the existing property immediately adjacent to it, and you block all the views, decrease the natural light and eliminate a green space, that's going to have an impact on what the property would sell for in the market. And because of that, I would ask the board again to consider the sale adjusted value as of July 1st and assign a 2023 market value below what it's been assessed at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Bannerman?
So I just want to again reiterate that we believe the subject properties assessment is both fair and equitable, and it reflects the current market conditions. The assessment was prepared in accordance with the legislation, and the comparable sales support the valuation. So while the complainant's concerns regarding future development are noted, we've seen no evidence to show that they presently impact the market value as of July 1st, 2023. So again, we respectfully request that the board confirms the 2023 assessment at $1,230,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilding, you have an opportunity for the last word.
No final words.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I would ask the two parties if they feel they've been heard today and if they feel they have received a fair hearing. Mr. Wilding?
I do. No, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bannerman?
I do as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will now declare the hearing closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. The MGA requires a written decision within 30 days and gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We will make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you at the earliest opportunity. Thank you both.
Thank you for your time.